How does this rough sketch turn into this 20-foot long mural? We're going to tell you the story in Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. This episode takes us to the Museum of Flying in Santa Monica, California, for an inside look at painting the Fly Douglas mural. The Museum of Flying opened in this location in 2012. It's an extension of the original Douglas Library, which was established in 1974. And Donald Douglas Jr. Worked with city leaders and Mr. David Price to create the Museum of Flying, which opened in its original form in 1989. The DC-3 that you see here is a monument owned by the city of Santa Monica honoring the Douglas Aircraft Company. And to that end, I wanted a project that I could propose to the museum to honor Mr. Douglas's career and his contribution to aviation, namely all the airliners that were produced in Santa Monica and Long Beach, with the jets, the DC-8 you see here, and the DC-9 and DC-10. To do this, I wanted to put all the DC airliners in formation together, something that would be impossible in real life, but could be created in artwork. And the view that I chose goes back to my early childhood memories of seeing Douglas airliners in promotional brochures like this, or in lithographs, and even photographs. They all had that view of looking up at the airplane as it was soaring into the heavens, very majestic looking view of the machine. And so using that view, I put all 10 of these airliners in formation over a cloud deck, and then added the appropriate logos for each era below. And this was the original idea and the original concept for the mural. These drawings are out of perspective, but they're in numerical order, with the DC-1 at the bottom, the DC-2, the DC-3, the 4, the 5, and the 6, the 7 and the 8 first jet, the DC-9, and of course the tri-jet wide-body DC-10. Well, when you see them on a perspective grid, the 2-inch squares that you see here in this final detail drawing, this is a 1/6 scale engineering drawing of what the final mural is going to look like. And each of those squares, 2 inches, represents 1 foot on the wall that you're going to see in a moment. But this was the final drawing that was approved and given the go-ahead for production. And the next step was to put it up on the wall. This is the west-facing wall of what is called the Douglas Alley. This is the part of the museum that is reserved for the Douglas artifacts. Much of the display items, original furniture from the company, are all exhibited in this part of the museum. So you can see on the right, I have my hydraulic lift ready to go, and the beginning of mapping out the 10 by 20 foot area on the wall that is going to become the mural. Next step is to put 3 coats of hand-sanded acrylic gesso onto the wall. You see that light gray color, and that's the proper ground to receive what will be the oil paints used to create the final artwork. Here I am putting the airplanes up on the grid so that they're located precisely where they need to be for the total composition. And here you can see an example of the transfer. The drawing at upper left is the Xerox copy blown up to size. Graphite and charcoal are put on the back side, and then the airplane is redrawn over that image to create the line drawing of the DC-9 that you see here. And that process is repeated for all 10 airplanes and the logos. And then once those fine line drawings are on the wall, I go back and touch up and tweak, as I say, the drawings to get them ready to paint. The story of the logos is an important one because the first logo that you see at upper left was a result of the Douglas World Cruisers circumnavigating the globe in 1924 and creating the slogan, "First Around the World." And those 3 airplanes were then represented in all the Douglas logos that came since. So each decade has a logo to represent the airplanes of that era. I hired my friend Jim Keeshan, who's a fellow artist, to do the logos, and Jim helped me on a number of projects over the years. And here you see him mounting the logos onto the finished area of the wall. Then going back and again, fine tuning some of the line work, getting ready to paint. First step is to put the sky in. And I should mention that this is direct painted. This is a different process or a different technique than I would use for my fine art paintings, where I go in with a rough underpainting to create kind of a roadmap and then develop that into final art. What's happening here, much like playing music live versus piece by piece in a recording studio, what you see on the wall is final color. And so I'm painting the sky and the logos are painted in. And let's see what happens now. This gives you an idea of the scale of the mural. DC7C is above me. I'm putting the sky in with a 3-inch house brush. And I use this brush and all the way down to a 000 fine art brush for the detail lettering and pinstriping and things like that. But here you see the background completed, and the clouds now have been painted around the logos that were there to begin with. And I now have the background within which I will insert the airplanes. This is a close-up of the work to this step. That thunderhead was actually observed. We painted the mural in the summer of 2012, and I actually looked out the window to the north and saw that thunderhead out over the desert and decided to incorporate it. It's symbolic of the turbulence the company went through in the 60s, which ultimately resulted in the merger with McDonnell Douglas in 1967. Now we're starting to paint in the markings on the airplanes, and this is a shot of the DC-7C and SAS markings. What's really cool is that the SAS Dragon that you see on the airplane, the eye of the dragon is actually the window in the crew door of the DC-7C. Nice touch. So here we have the airplane markings being painted to completion. And the airplanes are being wrapped up here. I'm putting in some detail work on the DC-5. And I'm going to tell you the story of each airplane at the end of this presentation, because each airline color scheme was chosen very carefully to create a story that the docents could share with viewers when the mural was completed. So now we're getting pretty close. This is at about 80% completion. Still some detail work and of course the lettering to put on the airplanes. And that is done in that same transfer method. And here you can see how that works. The charcoal is on a piece of tissue on the back side. And in this case, I'm putting the Western Airlines title on the DC-6B. But here you can see how that worked. I had the word Western and then drew over that, and the charcoal was then transferred to the wall. I would clean that with a kneaded eraser to create a nice clean line and then paint in the final markings. This was my office for the better part of 4 months up on the hydraulic lift. I had my paint and brushes and rule, and you see the photo of the DC-6 up taped to the side of the lift, which is a reference drawing that I was using when I was painting that airplane. Now this is interesting. When you look from the floor or even from a distance at the mural, this is what you see for the DC-8. But when you're on the lift, you're actually right next to the wall, and this is what you see for the same airplane. So that distortion has to be factored in while you're up there painting, and it takes a little practice, but after a while you get the hang of it. And so now with the mural at 100% completion, let's talk about the stories of each of these airplanes. The DC-1, 1933 first flight, was created for Jack Fry, president of TWA, and that wasn't Trans World Airlines in those days. That was Transcontinental and Western. You notice that the number 2 engine propeller is stopped, not feathered, but just shown literally in a stop position. This is an artistic license call because what I'm trying to convey here is how Mr. Douglas demonstrated the single engine safety of the DC-1. This really went to the heart of his character and integrity in the airplane business. He chose to demonstrate the safety of the airplane by literally removing the number 2 propeller and flying the airplane on one engine from Winslow, Arizona to Albuquerque, New Mexico to show the ultimate safety of the airplane. If I showed the airplane correctly with the prop removed, it would be hard to tell that it wasn't just turning. So I put the propeller on there in a stop position. And lo and behold, everybody that came by would ask, why is that propeller stopped? And then we could share the story of the single engine flight. Next was the DC-2, called the Douglas Racer, and for good reason. The DC-2 went into service with KLM and was entered in the McRobertson Air Race from London to Sydney, Australia in 1934. And lo and behold, with a full load of passengers, it came in second behind an English twin-engine racing airplane. And so from then on, it was always known as the Douglas Racer, but a nice testimonial to the performance and speed of the airplane. Above, you see the DC-3, actually the Douglas Sleeper Transport, which was launched by American Airlines in 1935. And this is called the airplane that changed the world. It really created modern air transport as we know it. Safe, reliable, comfortable transportation. DC-3 was a breakthrough airplane. And next we have the DC-5, which belonged to William Boeing. This is the first of 12 DC-5s that was built, and it was Mr. Boeing's personal transport. Mr. Boeing and Mr. Douglas were very close friends and always supported each other's businesses as best they could. Next, the DC-6, first flew in 1948. Pressurized airplane for Western Airlines, the only way to fly. And what we tried to do was choose airlines that were either germane to Southern California or the West Coast and had some sort of connection to the museum and to Los Angeles. And that being said, the DC-7C that you see above from SAS, Scandinavian Airlines System, was used for the first transpolar flights from the West Coast of the United States to Europe. Going out of numerical order, but next you see the DC-4 in PSA, Pacific Southwest Airlines, good local company for California. And we tell the story of the square windows being painted around the oval DC-4 windows, making passengers think that they were getting on a pressurized DC-6. The DC-8 and Pan American marking is very significant. It was Douglas's first jet airliner. And Juan Trippe, president of Pan Am, actually ordered more DC-8s than 707s in the beginning because the DC-8 had superior range. That's an interesting fact for museum visitors. DC-9, we could only go with Hughes Air West, top banana, and always brought a lot of smiles, especially from kids. And people would ask, why did I use Hughes Air West? And I would just say, because it was yellow and I needed the color. But a staple of Southern California transportation. And as I said, the top banana in the West always brought a smile. And finally, the United DC-10 was a tribute to Clay Lacy, who was the legendary United captain, flew DC-10s, loved the airplane, and a tribute to Clay because he is a longtime museum supporter. And we wanted to honor that with a tribute showing his favorite airplane. And there you have the final image. Fly Douglas. The mural took 600 hours and the better part of 6 months to complete. It was mainly painted at night, although we painted on weekends so visitors could actually see the process of the mural being created. It became kind of a living exhibit. That was kind of neat. It was dedicated at the museum on November 24th, 2012. And there you see it on the wall at the Douglas Alley in the Museum of Flying. As a final tribute to Mr. Douglas, I entered the mural in the Combs Gates competition for the National Aviation Hall of Fame. The Combs Gates Award is a very prestigious award given to people who document aviation history. And I became the first artist, and I believe the only artist, to win the award in 2013. I accepted the award at the National Business Aircraft Association convention in Las Vegas, Nevada, and was honored to have the award presented to me by Apollo astronaut Gene Cernan. So the mural was a great success, viewed at the museum by hundreds, if not thousands of people. And then that created the opportunity to paint 2 more murals at the museum, Fly Navy, which was a tribute to all the Navy airplanes that Douglas produced, seen here on the deck of the USS Forrestal, and Record Breakers, the 3 experimental aircraft that flew in Edwards Air Force Base during the golden age of flight test. We're going to bring you the story of those murals in future episodes of Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. As always, I'd like to say special thanks to some of the great people that made these projects possible. Mr. Dan Ryan was the director of the Museum of Flying. Robin Riggs, Boeing Long Beach, photographed many of the images that you saw here. Chad Slattery also photographed final images of the mural. And Beverly Hoskinson was president of the Employees Community Fund of Boeing, California, the organization that sponsored all three projects. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And until next time, take care.